What's up guys, this is Seth from Dark Waters Fly Shop. Today I'm going to teach you how to tie an articulated musky fly that I came up with last year. It's a pretty sweet pattern. I've had a lot of people asking me how to tie it. Truth be told, I didn't do a lot of musky fishing last year, and most of the parts of this musky fly have been adapted from different flies that I've learned from tyers like Bill Shearer, Gunnar Bremer, and a few other people. So there's nothing too spectacular about it as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not an expert on musky flies. However, I had a lot of people ask me to put a video up on tying this fly, so here goes. All right guys, so just a couple notes of preparation here. I'm only tying this on a 3/0 hook. This is actually it's a Trout Predator Attitude Extra wide gap. It's the ACSE-S4 that is there. I will let you see that. It's a 3/0, so I understand that like in the musky game you can definitely go way bigger. Go for it if you want to. Another area of preparation for you are the articulated shanks that I make. I may do another video on that. Again, you can go and look up, you can YouTube making your own articulated shanks. This isn't too complicated, but the reason why I do it is because when they connect, a lot of times when you buy articulated shanks, the loop is not big enough for the articulation, and so I make my own so that, as you can see, the eye of that hook goes through there. There's a lot of movement, and I'll also show you how I kind of watch my materials going up to the joint as well, so it doesn't get too clogged up, so it doesn't have a lot of good articulation. So making your own articulated shanks, or at least having shanks that are big enough that you get tons of movement in those loop connections. You can also use wire if you want a bigger loop as well. All right, so the last area of preparation that you will need to do is you will need a dubbing brush. I've tied this up. This is just a gold color. One of my buddies that does a lot of musky fishing in our area, you guys have seen me do videos with him. His name's Benjamin Haight. He swears by like smallmouth colors. And so I'm gonna go ahead and tie up a smallmouth fly, make this kind of look like a smallmouth or even like a sucker or something like that. But this emulates the bait fish in our area. Or maybe not the bait fish, but the fish that are prey of these larger Esox species. All right, so I am using a GSP in 150 denier. I'm just a big fan of that. I use it for almost all my flies. I don't tie a lot of really small trout flies because I just buy those, but one of the things that I do is I use this GSP because it's really, really strong, and I can reef on stuff and not have to worry about anything going wrong there. The first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna make a very simple tail. It's gonna be tapered as much as I possibly can, kind of come to a point. I did receive some critique on this fly just recently from another musky fly tyer, and his thoughts on it were that the tail was not as defined as it could be or as it should be for some of those muskies. So I'm going to take that to heart, and I will kind of bulk out this tail just a little bit more. What you're going to notice is I put some loose thread wraps on, I move myself forward, and then I tighten that down. The reason why is because this tail, I do want to taper. I do want it to kind of to come down. As you can see how this is flaring out here. This has got a big flare on it right now, and I kind of want that to come to a point. I'm going to add I don't want a lot of bulk on the back of this fly, much like the scallywag. You guys have seen me tie that before, and one of the things I noticed when I rewatched that video is that tail kind of flared out a lot. So one of the things I'm working on is shaping these flies, getting them to a good place that they have a really good profile. And the tail on this, I don't want super flared, but I'm going to put some other materials on here, and we'll continue to see how things go. One of the things that I've realized causes these flies to move really well in the water are hackle feathers, really long and wispy ones. I've already got a couple pieces here that I'm going to cut, and I'm going to put these on the back of here. I'm actually going to add a lot of these to this fly, and the reason why I add a lot of them is because it just adds lots of movement in the water. Nothing super complicated about this, and there's not a real serious amount of thought that I put into where they go or how they go in here. I do them kind of random as I build the front of this fly, and you're gonna see, like, if I hold up the fly that I have previously tied, there's tons of them in there, and that really provides a lot of movement. I'm also able to go light on the dubbing brush, and this still gives it a lot bulk, or the visual of bulk, and yet there's not a lot in there. This fly is extremely light. All right, so as you can see, there's like nothing on this right now. There's some bucktail for that tip of the tail there, and then I have a couple just long hackle feathers on the top of that. That's it so far. Now I'm gonna come in with this dubbing brush, and I'm gonna palmer this forward, and you're gonna watch. This stuff is so light. My favorite aspect of this fly is how light it is. It's extremely, extremely light. And what I've been trying to do recently, if I do get into tying, I'm not an expert on it, but one of the things that I've really enjoyed discovering is trying to make the illusion of bulk, getting something that just looks huge and has the proper profile, but keeping it just like air. You know, using a lot of synthetics so that this thing sheds water super fast. You know, one of the things that I like about, like I said, that scallywag that I tie, that popper version of this, is that it has the ability to just, you throw that thing back one time, you put that thing back one time, and all of the water is out of it. I mean, I can flick that thing once and it's completely dry. So that's kind of the cool part of this. But I'm gonna go ahead and just palmer this forward, pulling really hard on this dubbing brush, making sure that wire is super tight down to the hook shank. Doing some pretty tight wraps. I'm wrapping this around as many times as I can before I get to the point where I want to stop. The benefit of these dubbing brushes is that, you know, being completely synthetic like this, putting all these wraps on here isn't going to add a whole lot of mass, but it's going to give it the illusion of mass. All right, now I'm going to stop right here. If you look closely, you'll be able to see that I still have in between 1/8 and 1/4 inch of hook shank left, and I'm going to stop there. When I started this video, I told you guys that I like to leave the front of the hook shank on the hook, and then also the rear aspect of the articulated shank that's going to go in front. I like to leave those not completely bare, but I like to get very picky about how much materials that I'm putting on those so that I don't run into crowding that articulation section and preventing movement from this fly. So I'm going to continue to wrap this up here, and then I'll go ahead and snip that off. I couldn't find my comb. So I'm just using this closed scissors here to just get all this picked out here. So you can see how that flared out a ton. We're getting some bulk there, which is super cool. And yet this is like weighs absolutely nothing. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add a little flash in here. Nothing super technical. Got some flash. I'm just going to add it all the way around. I'm going to taper it out a little bit, spread it around on here. All right, and then I'm going to follow that up with some more hackle feathers. Lay those over and kind of look at my length. The way I'm going to lay these hackle feathers over is kind of random. I'm just going to put one in at a time, and I'm going to wrap it in. I'm going to lay another one in on the opposite side, kind of in the same place, and I'm going to wrap that in. And I'm going to do that over and over again until I kind of fill out the collars and the back section of this body with hackle feathers. All right. Coming around here. I'm leaving the bottom a little bare because it's got that lighter color, and as you know, profile fish and different things, you're going to see that lighter color on the belly, darker color on the top. And so we're starting to get a little bit more profile there, a little bit more coloring of a body. And so now at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean the eye of this hook up a little bit. Make sure all these materials are wrapped back. If you look at the joint area here on this hook, you can see how there is a large section on the front of here that is wide open. I mean, this is like if I showed you, like, just if I grab this for reference, you know, that's a 1/4 inch, maybe, yeah, that's probably a 1/4 inch right there, easy, of just open hook space or open shank. Wrapping that up. I'm gonna whip finish that a few times, throw some cement on there, and I'm gonna leave that. Some people might think, man, it's like a huge joint in the body that you're leaving wide open there. The reason why I do that is because it really gives me a lot more articulation in the fly. So I'm gonna let that dry, and then moving on to the next step, we're gonna work our way forward. Yeah. Oh, right on. Yeah. All right, dude. All right, Ryan. Take it easy. See ya. Something kind of wild that happened. Sorry about that interruption. My phone just rang. But Ryan, the owner of fly rod manufacturing company Risen Fly, he just let me know that he's going to be sending me a prototype musky rod, which is pretty sweet. So they've got a special rod that's in production, or getting ready to be in production right now, for muskies. So if you haven't heard of Risen Fly, you should go ahead and check them out. There's going to be some information coming out about this new musky rod that they got going on. I'm pretty stoked about it, and I can't wait to see it. All right, so my wife, awesome, she went and got me a brush. She was at the store. I called her. I said, hey, I need a brush. I can't find my comb for these flies. So she got me one. Awesome. So we're good to go there. Brush that out. Get all that stuff squared away. Next step. This joint here, we're going to come forward just a little bit, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the tail. I'm just going to take a little bit of bucktail, and not a lot of it. I'm going to take a little bit of bucktail and put it on this right after this intersection here of this articulation. And what that's going to do, I believe, is it's just going to flare out a little bit. I don't want to flare it out a ton. But because of the coarseness of this bucktail, it's going to keep my softer materials from my dubbing brush that I'm going to wrap in here from getting all wrapped in that articulation. It's going to kind of keep it away from the section where that's going to articulate. Maybe I'm just being superstitious, but that's kind of how I feel about it. So, like I said, I'm not the expert on musky flies. The only reason why I'm doing this video is because some of you guys saw that fly that I put out and then asked for it to hit my YouTube channel. So that's what I'm doing there. Wrap that in, tighten it down a little bit more, and comb it out. That should be it. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take that dubbing brush and I'm gonna wrap it to about here. Go ahead and do that. Keep rolling. All right, so I'm gonna go to about right there. Again, when I get to the bottom part of this dubbing brush where I'm gonna cut it off, I'm gonna separate some of those materials, put this down, and get it right in between there. Keep wrapping this stuff up, keeping it tight, and then get in front of it. All right, and then I'm gonna cut that off. So that's what we have so far. I come back. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take more of these hackle feathers and I'm going to put those in along that top section there after I comb all this out. Doing it all the way around the fly, like the top part of it, not the bottom, because these are dark hackles. And I don't want to, actually I think that's enough. I don't need any more on that one. So I'll trim this off. Keep wrapping just that down. Durability is key on these. All right, comb that out. Maybe I'll put one more on that side. Now that I'm looking here, I'm gonna put one more right on this side. Go where that's gonna wind up. There we go. Really starting to get there. You can see that body is really starting to fill out now. We got good taper. Now, what we're gonna do here is on this fly that you see that I've done already, you have different colors for this one, but the back there, that's this section right here, back here. Same way. When we come to the front though, you can see that there's a collar right here. This is kind of that wing that comes back over the top. Then you have this bucktail collar. It's not a lot. It's not a huge collar. What it is it's just to cover that transition into the head. That's all it's gonna be. I have people that, you know, randomly drop off tying materials to me. So I'm gonna use this. This is actually like a olive deer body hair. So it's pretty coarse. This is gonna flare out quite a bit when I put it on. That's the color that I've got there. I'm not gonna stack it or anything like that, but I am gonna grab a healthy clump of it here. And this is going to go all the way around the hook shank. You do have to be careful with this material because it will, when you're using GSP, it will cut on you. If you really go to tighten this down, it will cut and break the material if you reef on it too hard. So we are gonna spin this, getting all the guard hairs out of there. I'm gonna trim that up. It, like I said before, you don't have to like stack it precisely. I try to line it up. You know, you do want it to be consistent, but it doesn't have to be super crazy. So you can see where this is going to come back. I'm coming from the tip here, and I've probably got, I don't know, what is that, an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay that right on top of here, like so. I'm gonna do a couple loose wraps around the top of that. So just a few loose wraps like that. Pull it back just a little bit further. There's 3. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push down on this so it goes all the way around that hook shank. I'm gonna keep it going down. I'm gonna pull out a little bit more thread here. Throw a couple more loose wraps on there. All right, and I'm gonna pull down on this as I spin that. All right, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push this back. You saw that spin out and flare out like that. Now that's flaring out quite a bit more than I want. As you can see here, I'll use my phone as a background. As you can see, we've got a big gap in between this collar and this right here, and I want that to lay back more a little bit. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna push back here, and I'm just gonna take my thread. I'm just gonna put some more thread wraps in there. I'll move forward, and I'm just gonna kind of keep trying to work that material back. If I come up with my thread wraps and pull down, it's gonna flare it out even more. So I'm actually, the further back I go, I do some loose thread wraps, and then when I come forward, I get a little bit tighter. And that's just taming all those materials down. That's all that's doing. You could trim it if you want. You know what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna trim all this stuff away. Pull this down. And so there is that. Now, for the head, what we're gonna do for the head here is we're actually gonna be using strung fuzzy fiber. This is a pattern or a head design that I saw Gunnar Brammer do. Very cool. I use it on a lot of stuff now. I really like you doing it. I'm gonna go ahead and prep that material. I'll show you how I do that here, and we'll keep rolling. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna set it aside, and I'll show you what I do to prep the head. All right, so far this is the color of our fly that we have right here. That's the color of the fly. So I want to do a head that's a little bit darker, but I don't want to quite go as dark as this brown from the strung fuzzy fiber. One of the cool things about materials that a lot of people don't realize until they start listening to tips and tricks on this kinds of stuff is you can take multiple colors and you can just blend them. Gunnar showed something on his channel that I really thought was cool where he rip stacks it. So he'll just take a handful of materials, he'll put them together, and he'll just rip, like pull it apart and put it back together. In fact, I did that earlier. I picked up all the leftover materials from my dubbing brush that I made, and all of these are separate materials. So like that stuff right there, and all I'm doing is I'm just rip stacking it. I'm just pulling that stuff out, stacking it together, and this is now pre-blended. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this for my next dubbing brush. It's already blended, I can just put it together and it's there. So that's super cool. What I'm gonna do is we're gonna make the head of this fly that we're working on, not this one, but one like it. This is strung fuzzy fiber, but you can see if you look closely, there's some flash in there and different things. We're gonna rip stack this strung fuzzy fiber. I do it in a number of lengths, and it's almost like spinning deer hair, almost, but not quite. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some of this material here, and I'm gonna take, you're gonna need a decent amount of material for that head because you are gonna have to shape it. So I'm gonna take probably 4 inches, I would say 4 or 5 inches of this stuff, and I might not need all of that because I'm gonna stack it with some other, I'm gonna blend it with some other stuff. So I'm gonna take 4 or 5 inches of this in a diameter, maybe the size of, in between like a Sharpie and a Bic pen. So 4 or 5 inches of that. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the same thing with this darker brown. And I'm gonna take maybe just a little bit less of this as far as thickness and diameter and amount of materials go. Maybe the size of a Bic pen when I squeeze it together. 4 or 5 inches of that. Just because of the blending that I'm gonna do. And so I take those 2 different colors. I take this material here, strung fuzzy fiber. I take that material and that material. I'm gonna put them together. And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start pulling it out of one hand and stacking it in another hand. And then periodically, I'm gonna take my brush and I'm just gonna brush it out so that I can get any like little tiny fibers that are in there that I don't want. But it's also going to straighten it out. So now, as you can see, I'm starting to get more of a blend of color. So that's all I'm going to do. The other thing, after I finish doing this, I'm very close to it right now actually. I think I'll go ahead and do it. I'm going to take a little bit flash. I'm going to put some flash in there. This is, what is this? This is Hairline dubbing, I think. This is their accent flash. That's what I'm using. Not going to take a lot of it, but the other thing that you can use is you can use Ripple Ice Fiber. Works really well. I don't have as much Ripple Ice Fiber with me in the color that I wanted. So just going to take this, continuing to pull all this material out, and I might have more here. That now that I'm looking at it, I might have a lot more here than I need. That's fine. The way that I'm going to cut this and the way that I'm going to taper it is going to be I'll do a couple flies with this material. I might even spin this up into a dubbing brush or something. So once I'm confident that this is blended appropriately, what I'm going to do is I'm going to comb this out. Again, just straighten it out. Comb that out just like that. I flip it over. I comb the other side out like that. You do lose a little bit of material there. You can see I've got some fuzz. I might comb that out even and use it later down the road. So now what I have is I have something that looks like this. All right, that's got flash in it. If you can't see that flash, I apologize. There, you get a little bit of it reflecting there. And basically this is about, because we took a couple 5-inch pieces, we put them together, we rip stacked it. This is probably about 8 inches, maybe 7 inches. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this into 4 pieces. I'm gonna cut about right here on the top, and I'm gonna use that taper See how that's all tapered up there? I'm gonna use that for the back section of the head, and then I'm gonna have 2 middle sections that I'm gonna cut, and then I'm also gonna have this bottom tapered section, and I'm gonna lay those on the table before me. I will go ahead and cut those. I will lay them on the table so that you can see how I'm prepping these materials for the head. All right, so I'm taking you around here, and I'm just showing you these materials. That's tapered, that is not. That was the middle section, and that was the bottom section. I will probably end up taking this middle section and separating it somewhere in the middle here like this, using this and that as 2 separate pieces. Now let me show you how I put them on the fly. All right, guys, so I have 2 tapered sections here. I'm gonna go ahead and take the top tapered section, and I'm gonna, it's a little bit, it's just got a little bit more bulk to it, not much. I'm gonna use this one on the top, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stack this in a way. This head is gonna be huge. This head is gonna be absolutely huge. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut it to shape. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna put it on the top here. It's kind of going over the top of this bucktail collar a little bit. That's okay, because we want that transition of the profile of that fly. So this is going on the top. I'm wrapping it down pretty stinking tight here in a second. But what I'm doing is I'm keeping this stuff kind of on the top, tightening that, pulling that real tight. And before I push this back or do anything, what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna flip this over and I'm gonna put this stuff on the bottom. And this is the other tapered section right here. I'm gonna put it on the bottom. Same type of split in like laying it back, you know, kind of 50-50, maybe 60-40, more of it toward the back than the front. The key is that you want that taper to follow back and to make that transition well. Okay, so now you can see, I don't want to brush this out too much because it's not as tight as I absolutely want it here, but if I take this and start brushing it out, you can see how this strong fuzzy fiber head is almost spinning like deer hair, almost. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take this material, I'm gonna push it back like I'm spinning deer hair, all right? So I'm gonna kind of work my thread through the front of that, like so. I'm moving this back, and now I'm pushing all these materials back, and I'm wrapping this thread back so that it is pushing those materials back even further. All right, pushing it back, kind of spinning it around down there. Now, if you wanted to, you could brush that together. This strong fuzzy fiber is so gnarly and kind of kinky that it's going to push all that stuff back. It's going to wrap in itself. Now, if you notice, I still have all of this material. I could probably do 4 different wraps of this going forward, depending on how much hook shank I have. This is going to be a relatively big head. I've got about a 1/2 inch of space left on the front of this. And so what I'm going to do, maybe in between a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch, I'm just going to keep working this stuff forward to taste, and just putting it on there the same way that I did that last piece. And you don't have to worry. We're going to shape this head. So, you know, when you're putting all this on here right now and it just looks absolutely gaudy, don't worry about it. All right. So like that stuff right there, I just put a couple hard wraps on that, tightening it down. I'm going to maybe come over once, flip it over, do the same thing on the bottom. And all I'm doing is I'm taking this material and I'm filling this out all the way to the front of the head. So this material is going to come back. This is going to lay on the top of that. Like so. Flip it up, push it back, flip it back over. And it almost looks like spun deer hair at this point. It's kind of cool. I suppose you could do this also in like a dubbing brush. That's not what I'm doing. And my last piece is going to go on the top here. But what I'm also going to do is kind of spread it around on the hook shank. It appears to me right now that I have a little bit more hook shank left over in the front here. As I push that back, I'm going to flip it over just look and see my materials here. And I'm just gonna build up just a solid thread base on the front of there. Now, it looks as though I could probably take a little bit more of this. Actually, this is the leftover fibers that I have here. I might even try to comb this out and just get a little bit more material for the front of that. Just to get it up to the front of that shank. Yeah, this'll work. Get creative, right? So I'm taking this material and I'm gonna just spread this around the front just to get utilize the front, the very front of this hook shank. You're gonna be surprised at how much of this actually gets cut off of here. You might be able to be more stingy with your materials than I have been on this fly, because this head, as you can see right now, just looks like a stinking mess. But what I'm gonna do, all right, that's tight down there. I'm gonna whip finish this a few times. I love GSP. I love how much you can just reef on this stuff. All right, that will also get some head cement on it. Watch this though. Like, this absolutely looks crazy. You're gonna see this and you're gonna be like, what the heck? Okay, so that's what that looks like right now. That is absolutely atrocious. And so I'm gonna come back. Oh, I pulled that thing out of there and I shouldn't have. Get that back in my vise. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna comb this out. It's thick. It's super thick. But I'm gonna comb this out. Comb it back. Maybe even comb it forward a little bit. I'm just cleaning up all those materials. Getting that. I mean, look at that. That is just nasty. So, this is where you carefully, you can cut materials off, but you cannot put them back on. So, that's something to be careful of. I'm gonna start up top. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shape it top to bottom. I'm just gonna start very carefully trimming this up, getting an appropriate taper all the way to the back. Like I said, you can take materials off, but you cannot put them back on, so little by little. It's extremely important that you keep that in mind. All of us that do this have made the mistake of making an anorexic fly. Just get my collar out of the way here. All right, so as you can see, I'm starting to get a relatively solid taper front to back. Now this head and this fly is going to have, it's going to be a little bit more narrow, right? So now I'm going to take some of these materials back and I'm going to work my way down to get this side shaved down here. Some of these longer materials. Don't cut your collar. Whatever you do, do not cut that collar. That will destroy that fly. All right. Now we're getting a little bit closer. You can come in, you can brush it out a little bit. We're not quite there yet. This is a tedious process when you get to the front of this fly. Now I'm kind of trying to shape it and get into that transition of that collar. And now I'm getting really close on the sides. I'm kind of pushing it into that material and you can see it there. Now it's starting to come to life a little bit. I'm gonna keep working my way down. You can comb it forward if you want. You can comb it back. Basically, we're trimming all this up, trying to make All right, this is that other side there. I'm getting down into those materials. Getting kind of close here. Bottom needs to be trimmed up a little bit more. And now I'm starting to look at the transition between the head of this fly and this collar. That's what I'm starting to look at now. So that's where I'm coming back a little bit more. I'm pulling some of this up, looking at that side. And now this is kind of where you start going to taste how you want that fly to look. All right, we're getting pretty close here. I think I might, I'll pick this thing up and I'll look at it a couple different ways. Look at that. Look at how that bottom part of that body just falls straight down. That's because of how much room we left our articulation. It's exactly what that is. I'm going to set this down here, just comb it out real quick. All right, so far, that's the fly that you've got. That thing has some serious illusion of bulk. I mean, if I hold my, what did I do before? I used my phone. If I hold my phone up, I mean, you look at that thing just looks bulky. It looks huge, but there's nothing there. I mean, this thing is so light, it's ridiculous. And I'm gonna put some eyes on that with some, probably some E6000, and I will be right back. All right, guys, so that's pretty much the fly right there. I got to keep working on these eyes a little bit. That E6000 is not a quick drying epoxy, so you kind of put it on there. You work the that stuff into the head, and then you're kind of, maneuvering those eyes as they dry for a while when you're working with E6000. So, but that's the fly right there. I need a name for it, so if you guys would help me name this thing. I kind of stuck with pirate themes. I've got the Scallywag, and I've also got the Davy Jones. This is something that's works down in the water. Those other two are poppers. So if you got a name for me, pirate themed name, Dark Waters themed name for this musky fly, this pike fly, go ahead and put it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. I had a lot of requests to show this thing, so there you go. Again, I'm not the expert on these musky flies or anything, but I have tied this. This thing swims great in the water. It's a super cool thing. It's super light. That's the big thing about this fly, is it is so light. All right, guys, have a good day. Subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. See ya.